Our sermon lesson for today comes from 2 Kings chapter 4, beginning at verse 17. But the woman became pregnant, and the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. The child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with the reapers. He said to his father, "My head, my head." His father told the servant, "Carry him to his mother." After the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, then shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and a donkey so I can go to the man of God quickly and return." "Why go to him today?" he asked. "It's not the new moon or the Sabbath." "That's all right," she said. She saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Lead on, don't slow down for me unless I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. Then when he saw her in the distance, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, "Look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, 'Are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right?' 'Everything is all right,' she said. When she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, 'Leave her alone. She is in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me why.' 'Did I ask you for a son, my Lord?' she said. 'Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes?' Elisha said to Gehazi, 'Tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and run. Don't greet anyone you meet, and if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face.' But the child's mother said, 'As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you.' So he got up and followed her. Gehazi went on and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So Gehazi went back to meet Elisha and told him, 'The boy has not awakened.' When Elisha reached the house, there was the boy lying dead on his couch. He went in, shut the door on the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed and lay on the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. As he stretched himself out on him, the boy's body grew warm. Elisha turned away and walked back and forth in the room, and then got on the bed and stretched out on him once more. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, 'Call the Shunammite.' And he did. When she came, he said, 'Take your son.' She came in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she took her son and went out." This is God's word. Well, it's that time of year again. It's the time of year when sports fans get their hopes way too high only to have them let down. It happened just Thursday to fans of the Siena Saints. If you had asked fans of Siena, the 16 seed in the tournament who was going to play the number 1 overall seed, Duke, if you had asked them before the game, does your team stand a chance against Duke? All but the most diehard, borderline delusional fans of Siena would have said, "No, we're going to lose. We're just happy to be in the tournament." But then at halftime, when Siena was winning by 11 points and had played 20 minutes of incredible basketball, if you asked them, I think they might have started to say, "Yeah, we can do this. We can pull this off. We're 20 minutes away from a huge upset." And then the second half happened, and they kept the lead for most of the second half until finally Duke took the lead and eventually won by 6. They got their hopes up high, only to be disappointed when it didn't work out. This time of year, the same thing is happening with baseball fans. Opening day is Wednesday or Thursday, and as teams get ready to start the season, if you ask fans of most teams in the league, they'll say, "You know what? I think we have a shot this year. I think we're pretty good." But in the end, you know that only one team is going to go home with that World Series trophy, and if we're honest with ourselves, it's probably going to be the Dodgers again because they spend 5 times as much as anybody else. Everyone has got their hopes up high, but then in the end, most of us are going to be disappointed. This happens all the time in sports, but the problem is that it happens a lot in things more serious than sports too. We get our hopes up high, and then they come crashing back down to earth. Reality strikes, and we realize that our hopes were too high, that things don't always work out the way that we hoped that they would. And that's what happened for this woman in the story. She got her hopes up high, and then all of a sudden they came crashing back down. We didn't hear the beginning of the story, so I'll summarize it for you quickly. This woman was very wealthy, and she was also very generous. She lived in a city called Shunem, which is in the northern tribes of Israel. And Elisha, the prophet, used to travel more or less past her house. And so she said one time, "Hey, Elisha, why don't you come have dinner at my house with me and my husband?" So he did. She gave him a nice dinner, and then it kind of became a custom for Elisha. Anytime he traveled that way, most often between Mount Carmel, where he would stay, and then Samaria, the capital city of those northern tribes, he would stop by the woman's house, and they would have dinner. Well, it got to the point where the woman wanted to do more for him than just provide dinner, so she convinced her husband, "Let's build an addition onto our house. Let's make a garage apartment for Elisha," which is essentially what they did. Their house would have had a flat roof on top, and so they built a room on the roof with its own staircase leading up, and they fully furnished it for him so that he could come and go as he pleased. He had everything he needed on his travels. And so, overwhelmed by the generosity of the woman, Elisha thought, "I need to do something for her." So he made her this offer. He said, "I've got some pull in the capital city. Just let me know. I can put in a good word for you with the king. I can get you a nice place in Samaria if you want to go move to the capital city. I can make sure you're well provided for by the king." And she turns him down. She says, "No, I have what I need. I live among my own people. I'm happy here." So Elisha is presented with the age-old dilemma. What to get the woman who has everything? His servant comes to him, and he says, "I know 2 pieces of information that might be relevant. Number 1, this woman has no children. Number 2, her husband is very old." So Elisha goes to the woman and he says, "This time next year, you will hold a son in your arms." But what's interesting is that the woman resists that promise. She says, No, don't raise my hopes. Don't tell me that this is going to happen. I have already come to terms with the fact that I'm not going to have children. She's already grieved that. She's accepted that this is not in the cards for her. And so she says, "No, don't raise my hopes." But Elisha insists. He says, "No, this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms." And that's where we pick up in verse 17. God has fulfilled his promise to her. God has raised her hopes by doing for her what she thought was impossible, by providing for her a son, by making her a mother, something she never thought that she would be. She had given up hope on it. But God raised those hopes. Until one day, that child had become a young boy. Our best guess is between 6 and 8 years old, based on the Hebrew word and the details of the story. And so for however many years it was, she got to enjoy being a mother. She got to enjoy watching her son grow up. And then one day he went out to the field. It was harvest time. His dad was out supervising the harvest. And then he called out, "My head, my head." His dad probably chalked it up to heat stroke. Harvest time in Israel is the hottest time of the year. So he said to the servant, "Go take the boy to his mother. He needs to rest in the shade." The boy comes to his mom, sits on her lap until noon, and then he dies. Can you imagine the pain of that moment? That child that she has prayed for, that she has hoped for, that she's been over the moon excited about for 6 or 8 years, that son is taken away from her. He takes his last breath in her arms. The pain of that moment is unspeakable. But the woman does something interesting. She does a couple interesting things, actually. The first thing she does is she takes her son. And she takes him not to his bed, not to her bed. She takes him up that staircase and puts him on Elisha's bed. And then she goes and she gets a servant and she tells her husband, hey, we're going to the man of God. And the husband's busy with harvest time. He's not really sure what's going on. As far as he knows, that their son is resting in the shade, recovering from heat stroke. So he's confused. He says, why are you going to the man of God? We don't usually do that right now. And so she just answers him. She says, that's all right. What she says in Hebrew is shalom, peace. It's fine. And then she goes. She goes to see the man of God, and when Elisha sees her coming, he sends his servant and says, go ask her if everything is all right. If her husband, if her son is all right, if she's all right. And she responds to Gehazi. She says, shalom, peace. Everything's all right. Until she gets to the man of God. Then all the emotions start pouring out of her. She falls at his feet. She grabs onto them. And in depths of pain that I can't even imagine, she asks two heartbreaking rhetorical questions. She says, did I ask you for a son? Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes? There it is. God, through Elisha, raised her hopes higher than she thought possible, just to have them come crashing back down again. This woman, before in the story, before Elisha made this promise to her, she was so strong, so self-sufficient. She had everything. Now she's heartbroken, in complete and utter desperation. You couldn't blame her if she had thought that she was better off before Elisha made her that promise than after. She had given up hope, and maybe that was better, to not have any hope at all than to have her hopes raised, just to have them come crashing back down. You may not be able to relate exactly with this woman's story, but I bet you can relate to that feeling of having your hopes raised just to have them come crashing back down. Maybe it's in a battle with addiction. It's something that you had prayed over and over again. God, help me overcome this addiction. And it finally happened. You were finally able, with God's help, to say no to that temptation and to break that cycle. And things were going really well for a while, so you thought you were past it. And then you fall back into it. Maybe it's a relationship that has been strained or really maybe even broken for a long time. And you prayed that God would help you mend that broken relationship. And for a while it seemed like it was happening. There were productive conversations. Things were moving in a positive direction until the latest fight. Maybe it was hopes you had for retirement. And now you get there, and after all that work, it isn't what you hoped it would be. Maybe it's hopes for a new job. It could be any number of things. We get our hopes raised, and then reality strikes, and they come crashing back down to earth. When that happens, it makes you feel like you're worse off than you were before. Like you would have been better off never to have any hope at all than to have your hopes raised so high just to have them come crashing back down. So in that moment, you resolve not to let it happen again. You say, well, the solution to this is I'm not going to let my hopes get raised. I'm not going to let my hopes be that high anymore. I'm just going to accept that this is the way the world is. That things aren't going to turn out well for me. And so you slip into a quiet, cynical desperation. And yet at the same time, you know that you should be optimistic because of your faith, right? You should be optimistic that God has a good plan for your life. You should trust that this is all part of Him working all things for your good. But it's so hard to do that when your hopes keep coming crashing back down to the earth. See, people who study this story, they debate about this woman's actions. They debate about whether this woman is showing incredible faith in God by what she does or whether she's showing anger at God. when she takes her son and carries him up and puts him on Elisha's bed, is that her saying, Elisha, you, God, really, provided this son for me by a miracle. I trust that you can raise him by a miracle. Or is she saying, Elisha, I never asked you for this son. You raised my hopes up. His blood is on your hands. It's your problem to deal with. When she says to her husband and to the servant, everything is all right, everything is fine, is she saying that out of faith in her heart? Does she actually mean that? Or is she just putting on appearances until she gets to Elisha, where she can finally show how she really feels? Is this woman showing faith in God, or is she showing anger at God? That's the debate that scholars who study this story have. And my question is, do we have to choose? Because if I were her, if I put myself in her shoes in that moment, I think I'd be feeling both. I'd want to believe that God has a plan. I'd want to have faith, and at the same time, there would be some anger. There would be some resentment. There would be some hurt in my heart. Whatever she's feeling, Elisha realizes when she speaks to him that immediate action is necessary. So he sends his servant. He says, tuck your cloak in your belt and run. Run the 18.5 miles to this woman's house. Take my staff in your hand. If anyone says good morning to you, just ignore them. Don't greet anyone. Go. Run and place my staff on the boy's face. I don't know if Elisha thought that would do something, or if he's just marking that he's coming and saying, don't bury this child yet. Either way, Gehazi runs. He puts the staff on the boy's face, and Elisha follows behind. But he follows behind only because this woman makes it very clear to him in no uncertain terms that she will not leave his side unless he comes. So Elisha goes, and when he gets there, Gehazi reports to him, nothing has changed. The boy is still dead. So Elisha goes up to his room, he closes the door, and he prays. He prays because raising someone from the dead is not a magic trick. It's not something that he can do on his own strength. He prays, God, I need your help. I cannot do this. This has to be your power. He prays and he stretches himself out on the boy. And then he paces around and he does it again. He stretches himself out, and then the boy sneezes 7 times and wakes up. A detail that I have no other explanation for other than that's the way it happened. To some of you right now, as you see this, that the woman gets her child back. That just like at the beginning of the story, this story ends with her holding her beloved son in her arms. To some of you right now, this story might not be all that happy. To some of you, this story might make you a little bit envious. As you, if you're in the midst of some suffering or pain, and you see someone else have a happy ending to their story, it might not make you all that happy. Because God has not promised, you know that He has not promised that every story here on earth is going to have an ending like this. God has not promised to heal every addiction or bring back loved ones from the dead or heal every broken relationship. On this earth, in this world, there will be times when you're stuck in the middle of suffering, when your hopes have come crashing down and it doesn't seem like God is going to raise them back up again. And that's why what's most important in this story is not the happy ending of this woman getting her son back. What's most important is in this story is that it shows that our God has the power to undo death. Our God has that power, and He also has the love to not just promise an end to our suffering somewhere in the distant future, but to suffer with us here in the present. He has the love to send His Son into the world. You know that moment where the woman watched her son die in her arms? The unspeakable tragedy of watching her own son take his last breath God knows how that feels. God knows that pain. Because he sent his only Son, his beloved Son, into this world to carry not just the hopes of the world on his shoulders, but the sins of the world. To stretch himself out on the cross, to take our place, hands for hands, eyes for eyes, mouth for mouth, to take our place on the cross, to suffer for our sins. And God watched as his only beloved Son took his last breath. So he knows the suffering that we're going through. He is not some distant, far-off God who stands aloof in our suffering. He knows our suffering. He suffered himself. But then after the pain and the suffering of watching his Son take his last breath, he undid death. He rose his Son from the grave so that we don't only have the comfort of knowing that God knows how our suffering feels, we also have the comfort of knowing that our suffering has an expiration date. Because when Jesus rose from the dead, he started something. He was the first fruits of the resurrection, and now we know that one day we're going to rise too. Our loved ones who have died ahead of us will rise too. And we're going to be taken to a place where there is no sadness and no sorrow and pain, a place where all of the pain that we've felt, all of the losses that we have grieved will come undone, where God will wipe every tear from our eyes. That is our hope. That is our hope that God gives us. He raises our hopes above hopes of this life that are so fleeting and that can be lost so easily. He raises our hopes so that they're not just in things of this world, but so that our hopes are eternal. Our hopes are in the next life where he will finally and fully restore everything that we've lost. And that hope is why you can say what the woman said and mean it. You can say, everything is all right. The word she uses, I pointed it out throughout this reading, the word she uses is shalom. It's the Hebrew word that means peace. It can also mean a whole bunch of other things. But at its core, what it means is wholeness. You have everything that you need. You lack nothing. You are whole. That's what we have because of Jesus. That's what you have that's what you have when you have faith in the risen, ascended Lord. It's not naive optimism to say everything is all right. It's reality. Because in reality, in our world, Jesus came and he suffered the death we deserved. And then he rose from the grave to bring you new life. That is your reality. And so even if you can't see it right now, everything is all right. You have that sense of peace and wholeness through Jesus now and forever. Amen.